Picking a font can be a daunting task. There's so many fonts to choose from. Where do you even begin? What is going on? Not to worry, today we're gonna simplify picking the right fonts for your projects in 3 easy steps. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about understanding font types, picking the right fonts for your projects, and size. So we have 3 different font types that we're going over. There are 5, but today we're gonna go over 3. We got your serif, sans serif, and your script fonts. First off, serif. Serif is the kind of font that you see pretty much everywhere. It is a kind of font that you're probably told to use for your essays. You'd probably see this font in newspaper print. It's the kind of font that has that little curve at the end of each letter. It's that little dip. A little bit more decorative than fonts you would find on your phone. It's sophisticated, it's kind of curvy, it has this little dip, this little thing called a serif, and serif fonts have a serif. That's what makes a serif font. They're the most traditional kind of font you will find pretty much anywhere. Sans serif. Sans serif fonts are my favorite. They're amazing, they're clean, they're elegant, they're bold. These are my favorite kind of fonts to use because they're very easy to work with, very aesthetically pleasing. You can find these fonts pretty much anywhere online. You can probably see that your Twitter tweets are using sans serif, your phone has sans serif, the Nike logo has sans serif. You can find this font almost anywhere. It's timeless, it's easy to work with, and it's one of my favorite fonts to use. My favorite one to use is Futura Bold because it is timeless and beautiful. The last font type we're gonna be going over is script. Script is a font type that you'll primarily find in like historical documents, brands with a feminine touch, a feminine feel. You can find them in like vintage clothing and vintage brands. Script type fonts are often referred as the cursive font. It is silky, it's smooth, it is very elegant, not straight lines. It is very easy to distinguish a script. For the sake of simplicity, we're just gonna be working with these 3 font types. Let's talk about pairing fonts to your projects and fonts with each other. Before we can pick the right font for your project, we first need to know the context of your project. If you're designing a Valentine's Day card, for instance, and you're using the words "you're mine" while using the font that looks like this, that's not a Valentine's Day card. That's a death note. You'll want to use something a bit more friendly, something a bit more inviting, something that's not going to scream, "I want to kill you." Which leads me to my next point. Type is a form of communication. For instance, in the Valentine's Day card, if you're using a font that looks like this, you are actually expressing malicious intent versus a font like this, which is expressing a warm and welcoming statement. Always be thinking about the context of your project. This is what's going to be the driving force behind what you're trying to convey. This will also help pick the right fonts for your project. Think beyond the context of your project. Think about your audience. Think about what you're trying to convey. Think about the message. Think about the elements in your project. Doing this will help you pick your fonts accordingly. If there's a certain word or a phrase you're trying to emphasize, highlight it and change it. A rule of thumb that I think you should use is having contrast between the fonts that you're using. When you're pairing 2 different kind of fonts, regardless or not if they're in the same family, I like to use contrast to emphasize certain words or certain phrases that I'm trying to get across. Some fonts have different font families that allow you to go from thin to like black or thin to bold, and doing this will create some emphasis in your statement or the words that you're trying to convey. Think about what you want your audience to see. Our eyes naturally go towards things that are emphasized, things that are in our face. So if you have a "just do it" statement, for example, you do not want to use a font like this when you should be using a font like this, something that's going to allow you as the creator to emphasize what you're trying to get across to your audience. This is great. You've learned the differences between sans serif, serif, and script. You know exactly the context of your project, so you can pair the right fonts. You've learned very fundamental design principles when it comes to choosing the right font. You are way ahead of the competition, trust me. Now let's talk about size. This is the last part. So in your projects, whenever you're dealing with size, this goes back to the context. What are you trying to emphasize in your project? Question that gets asked often is, how big should my font be? How large should what's the size I should do? Well, think about the context. Are you trying to convey something really loud, or are you trying to convey something very quiet? Something subtle, something a little bit more intimate. That will determine the size of your font. So if you're trying to convey something loud, if you're trying to convey something in your face, think about using a font size that is a little bit bigger than normal. If you're trying to go a little bit more subtle, a little bit more intimate, you may want to have the size of your font be a little bit smaller. Just think about it. If you're trying to express something big, like this grandiose thing that you're trying to express to the world, you're gonna wanna use the biggest font possible, big, bold font, something big and massive that you wanna just show off. If you're trying to be a little bit more intimate and you kinda want that quiet feel, use a smaller font, bring it down some size. If you're trying to create like this mysterious wonder, this mysterious effect of intimacy, use a font that's small and elegant. Neutral toned projects, so something just like an announcement, something that doesn't really have any emotional driving force, nothing, just the most basic of basic stuff. Think about just you'll want something in the middle, nothing too big, nothing too small, just right. So that, my friend, is how you pick a font for your project. Bonus, if you go into the description below, I provided links to my favorite font websites. There's paid and free resources, so be sure to check out the description. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. That would mean the world to me. If you learned something today, go to the comment section. Let me know what you learned. Ask me questions. I would love to see your guys' responses, and I'll see you in the next one.